Today is June 28th. Welcome to Native Calgarian. Oki, Naganago, Mekoche, Chestakomaki. My name is Red Thunder Woman. My married English name is Michelle Robinson, and I use she and her pronouns. My Dene lineage roots me in the land of the Great Bear Lake Tribe in Treaty 11. My name is Dikots Nagotini Siku, and my people wore rabbit skin, so it's been referred to as the land of the hair people. I'm a native to Turtle Island, and my Dene Nation is a visitor to this area of Clincho, Tine, Indahe, and Satu Dene, meaning many big dog town, named after the Calgary Stampede. I was born in Calgary or in Blackfoot, Mokinstis, is Michelle Elliott, an English name which has afforded me privilege in an English colonial world. My mother is Northern Slavey Dene or Satu Dene, but my Indian Act imposed status card by the Canadian government says Yellowknives Dene. Through my father, I am a daughter of the Mayflower and a daughter of the American Revolution, while having a Canadian Indian Act imposed status card, which is a colonial construct by Canadian policies meant to divide Indigenous peoples' inherent rights. Indigenous Two Spirit or the Indigenous 2S LGBTQ plus community and Indigenous women are at the bottom of the Canadian socioeconomic ladder because of imposed trauma, imposed poverty, racism, gendered violence, and land theft. I do not speak on behalf of all Indigenous, but I share my journey as I walk down my red road. As a Dene woman who's attempted to run, joined harmful colonial parties, spent money to be at expensive conventions, left my home to travel to those conventions just to vote on incomplete policies that still allow for incarceration, a denial of justice, a denial of health services, racism, child apprehension, colonial trauma, and genocide of Indigenous and Black peoples, I have worked to continue reports to advocate for and attempt to work within these systems meant to harm me and my community. I think of all of this today, and I hope we honor the many Indigenous lives lost for this so-called country named Canada. I hope you all see your role in the importance of stopping harm, and as a citizen, see your role in reconciliation and as a treaty partner. Pride Month should never just be 1 month. It is important to understand that the straight agenda and gendered violence was and is forced on this land by Christian outsiders. Land acknowledgements are critical for creating a safer space for Indigenous, as well as honoring the host as a guest and acknowledging your role as a treaty partner in a so-called time of reconciliation. It's also important that land acknowledgements have that meaning. I encourage everyone to introduce themselves with an acknowledgement of their ancestors, stories of displacement, how you perceive your role as a treaty partner, a Canadian citizen, a refugee, or other land displacement, so we as Indigenous people know how safe you are to be around. If you don't know how to pronounce your local Indigenous nations' names, won't say your pronouns, your story of origin, won't acknowledge stolen lands, imposed economic oppression, or your role in reconciliation, I determine how safe you are to be around my community, my family, and of course, myself. Understanding land acknowledgements and their importance is Indigenous 101 because it immediately addresses colonialism, oppression dynamics, broken treaties, and lies taught today in Canadian schools nationally. That's why settlers and those who call themselves Native Calgarians or whatever town you're from, show me you have no Indigenous 101 understanding. Jesse Winte's book Unreconciled explains it perfectly, as do many Indigenous authored books. Land Back is a movement that could save the planet from climate change created by colonialism, but it would be a part of a treaty partnership and meaningful reconciliation and honoring global initiatives like the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People. I honor the Blackfoot as the elders and members have been so kind to me on my Red Road journey. Elder Red Crane taught me how to pronounce my spirit name in Blackfoot, and Leonard Kenny taught me how to pronounce my name in Satu Dene. My humblest apologies to the Blackfoot and Dene elders and language keepers as I try to learn proper pronunciation. I'm speaking to you on the lands of the Niitsitapi, which is the Blackfoot Confederacy. The Blackfoot south of the imposed U.S.-Canadian border are the Blackfeet, and north of the border are the Siksika, Kainai, and Piikani of the Confederacy. These lands are Treaty 7, signed September 22nd, 1877, with signatures that include the Blackfoot Confederacy, the Goodstoney, Wesley, the Chiniki, and the Bears Paw Nations of the Stoney Nations, and the Dene from Tsuut'ina. I acknowledge all First Nations, Métis, Inuit, status, and non-status across Turtle Island as the keepers of these lands. All non-Indigenous are treaty partners with the government signing on your behalf. My Patreon account is Native Calgarian, where you can pledge and support. Thank you, previous donors, for already showing your support. If you value listening or watching and can afford to give, thank you. To those who cannot afford to give, I'd love to hear from you at nativeyyc@gmail.com, where you can send in your comments or questions. Also, giving a review helps whatever medium you're listening from. I have a YouTube channel that you can go and subscribe. Go to nativecalgarian.com for the latest podcast and pin posts on social media. And I'm so happy to introduce a returning guest and friend, Matt Ashcroft, to our podcast. And Matt, would you like to introduce yourself in your way?
Hello, I'm Matt Ashcroft. I go by he, him pronouns. I'm a settler on Treaty 13, Tuckerado, the Haudenosaunee, the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Wendat, the Dish with One Spoon. And love the idea of the community aspect with Dish with One Spoon. And I really try to do my advocacy as like a community, not as like a leader, but as a community, because I feel like that's the type of advocacy that I want to do.
Sure.
And we'll touch more on that.
Yeah, that sounds great. Where would you like to start? You and I have been crazy going from like Twitter now into this TikTok world. Hey.
So let's give a little background on how we know each other.
Yeah.
So for those who haven't tuned in earlier episodes, like 2 episodes ago, we've been friends for a very long time. And it's not that I just like knew you for the sake of knowing you. It's like we're among the same friends, doing the same thing across Canada with partners, and we all did it together, and we all did it as a community. It was like some did more work, some like I put my heart and soul in it, but some did different work, some did more research, some did more policy, but I did a lot of awareness at the time, and I was doing a lot of awareness on Twitter, and I was doing a lot of awareness on Facebook and Instagram. And then I had a friend ask me about TikTok, and now we can discuss TikTok.
Right? My goodness. So just to give people an idea, like, obviously you and I are both very much in solidarity when it comes to gendered violence, spiritual abuse. For folks who don't know, Matt has been one of the leading voices when it comes to conversion therapy and the abuse that comes with it. So obviously since 2015, as a liberal, we've been trying to make positive changes for LGBTQ2 plus. And then, here we have this issue that I actually feel so much kindred spirits with you because of what the church has done to us as Indigenous people, and then what the church has done to you to try to make you straight. And honestly, that's what residential schools were, right? Like you were segregated, and you were forced to be sexually abused, physically abused, and told to be straight, and all of these awful things. What awful human beings we were, while they were perpetuating their abuse, and, Canada being just like, oh, the RCMP or the church would never do anything like that. And of course, that midnight policy change on Stephen Harper exonerated the Catholic Church from any of the funds that they were supposed to give us by the court system. So, I have nothing but contempt for Stephen Harper, anyone from his team, and until we have more meaningful reconciliation from that team, I will, door knock in Stephen Harper's old riding for the Calgary Heritage candidate that's running right now. E-Day is coming up here, and we're going to have a heck of a stampede and some fun while we basically talk about positive politics and some substantially great changes we've made as a party, as opposed to those other teams who are embedded in hate. And You and I, another commonality that we have is that as I'm an Indigenous woman, you are a Black gay man in Toronto, and yet we experience racism all the time from people who actually think they're progressive, which sucks. So, yeah, why don't you talk a little bit about how you ended up going on TikTok and how this experience has been for you?
I went on TikTok originally to find survivors of conversion therapy.
Sure.
That was my work before. That was my work during. That is my work now.
Yep.
That is what I do.
Sure.
And I've been doing it forever. And so I was trying to find more people, trying to see if I can boost my following, at least get some a loyal following, and I was at 16,000, which is like, okay, that was cool. I did not expect that at all. But and then it just got too much about following and not about relationship.
Yeah.
And the only reason why that I'm known in my community is because I put myself out there and I show up to places. And like, even Pride for me was more work than it was fun. I didn't have I a lot of time because I was like either fighting with street preachers or I was showing up at at the Pride Parade, and that's an interesting story that we'll touch on later. But altogether, it was all I tried to do during the months that you were witnessing it was to get allies to minorities to show up, to
Mhm.
show up, to give with their finances. And instead I had people say that I was gatekeeping what an ally is. You damn right I'm gatekeeping. That's what allyship is. It's you have to ask everybody in the community what an ally is, and not just the people that you like or the
Yep.
people that will agree with you.
Yeah. Yeah, no, so just conversely, because it's Indigenous Awareness Month, I've been stupidly busy and also putting up with people who like to think they're an ally, but obviously are not. Like when we tell them this is really problematic, and the way they react and such, it's like, you can't claim that you're in solidarity with somebody if you're not listening to them and you're not trying to do better when they say you've, committed harm to me, to other people, whatever it is that they've done. And I just find that you and I are constantly rolling our eyes or maybe finding a mutual video that is like, yes, this guy gets it. Why is this so hard for folks to understand what allyship is? So yeah, go ahead and tell me some of your thoughts on that.
So in the beginning, like I with the whole situation that I was on TikTok, um, I noticed that people were a little too friendly with these white nationalists, like
Yep.
almost to the point of flirty.
Yep.
And and that's when I was starting to have concerns because it seemed more about the following that they had on social media and who was watching it more than like like being a part of those communities, like it or listening to the concerns or showing up, or like I don't understand how somebody can show up on social media but they can't show up in real life.
Yeah, I
So
know.
that
I
was
think that's kind of the point. Like when I took the TikTok the National Screen Institution, they sponsored me and a few Indigenous folks to do this like programming. And the biggest thing I learned was that basically most people just have these incredible productions and personas that are on TikTok. And so, and you and I obviously long before that we've met on Twitter, we've met on other social media, And, so this is a new type of app for us. And what I'm finding is that people are, trying to be something they're not. Like they're not maybe in community, but they advocate for that community, which is great. Like we need folks to do that, no question. But I mean, if you're in the Calgary area and we're saying, hey, there's this protest, can you come? And you actually can never come at a certain
and make
point, then
excuses.
yeah, you're not actually acting, right? So allies are active, right? They're doing the work. And I struggle with that even with the Reconciliation Action Group, where I have this one settler that does the majority of the work, and a lot of folks like there's basically two of us Indigenous women in it, and I just find it's her and I talking a lot with them witnessing and not a lot of action, right? Like
Right.
their idea of action is very different than my idea of action. Their idea of action also includes us sharing our culture with them when we like that's not what we're asking for. We're asking for policy change sometimes, right? So there needs to be more actual work done, more making that phone call, making those emails, making sure we have people on our more work. So conversely, for your community, and I like to say my community in the sense that I only try to assist as I'm told. But that bigger picture is that because I advocate for missing and murdered Indigenous women, girls, and Two Spirit are our 2S LGBTQ2 plus. That's who they are. And Canada, if they would get behind the TRC and the National Inquiry Report, we would be solving like that bigger picture of racism and that bigger picture of gendered violence. But no, they don't want to include Indigenous. So they made a whole new separate report on gendered violence and an action plan for it. And it's like, well, then you're excluding us on purpose. Like you're saying that on purpose. So we're really, I'm struggling to try to get that voice of, we're having a genocide as Indigenous people, and our 2S are the most targeted and most likely to go missing, murdered, die of overdose or suicide. And Canada seems to be just a-okay with it, like they are all the rest of the regular day racism. And when we say no, don't do that, that's racist, our allies are like putting more effort into being offended and hurt and wanting an apology than just doing the work of anti-racism.
It's not hard to empathize. So when I was on TikTok and that entire thing happened, I was pretty scared
Yeah.
because it was like what it felt like, it was like 20 white people were after me, and I was like, or 19 and one black guy. And and that black guy is not even understanding that he is being used for this bigger agenda.
Yeah.
um Altogether, it's just we can all look at things from a racist lens. And to define racism, as per my course, an ism is a system, racism is a system that oppresses a race. So how is those folks contributing that system by trying to silence me, an activist that has been doing this longer than them?
Yeah, I know. It's really disappointing. If people put more effort into actually tackling systemic issues, imagine how much further we would get than attacking each other as individuals. But I know, it's that unchecked racism. And back to the black guy, obviously, all people can be racist. Some of the worst racism I get are from people of color who are, in the proximity of whiteness, right? Who haven't undone this thinking that as long as I act white, talk white, be white, I will be accepted into the community. And I can promise you that is never the case ever, because I
100%.
tried doing that for the first 30 years of my life and it didn't work. Right. I still experienced racism and sexism when giving birth to my daughter. And the more I'm honest and unpack it, it's everywhere. It is everywhere. And people, I was horrified to read the story yesterday on Twitter about a little boy who was, I want to say Oshawa, Ontario. I can't remember the name offhand, but was denied the bathroom. And of course he peed and, embarrassed, of course, that trauma will be forever. And I'm just so tired of this. The only reason why they discriminated against him is because he's a little native boy. If that was a little white boy, he probably would have been allowed to use that washroom. So, it's this has to end. And yet it I obviously the people in power really like power. So and I'm really feeling that here in Calgary because our Black Lives Matter activists, Taylor McNally and Adora Nufar, have been really gone after by the legal system and by policing. And they've actually charged one of our Black activists with a hate crime when she was the one who was trying to keep this white nationalist from your area who was flown here funded by I don't know who other than conservative hate groups to come out and terrorize our children in school. And the police are totally cool with that happening. Like, imagine me being transported to go to a Toronto hospital or Toronto school to harass children. Like, how in what God's name is that okay? But he was white, so that's the only thing I can make sense of why it is he was allowed to do that.
It's so frustrating.
Yeah.
And like the struggle that I had with TikTok is those people that were considered allies will never show up to those events and help make those situations happen
Right.
100% of the time.
Right.
So
So here's this kid trying to force his way into the school, and the moms who have children in the school are like, no. Now they're charging, oh, that's not even just a hate crime, but sexual assault too. And this is all on video. There's no sexual assault. Like it's just so wild to me that we can have Nazis screaming hate and they will never get charged because they're white. But one of our Black moms, all of a sudden she's problematic and getting a sexual assault charge, getting a hate crimes. I'm like, you guys can't seem to prove hate crimes unless it's against people of color. How is that possible unless you're just proud racist?
yeah, that was a lot that I was getting too, is like a lot of messages like you need to contact your lawyer, this and that and the third. And I'm just like, if my like like every single racist trope,
Yeah.
that I've experienced over TikTok,
Yeah.
like I experienced in real life as well.
Yeah.
So it's like, it's just, I guess it was a wake-up call that we might seem more progressive in some areas, but we have a long way to go.
Oh, I know. Canada really needs to unravel their racism. I'm really disappointed to see that. But just like I'm on Twitter or Facebook or TikTok, if somebody's trying to be manipulative, sea lioning, just not getting racism or sexism or oppression dynamics, I just block them because I don't have time for their bullshit. I don't have time to read their shit. And I just won't do it. So
Well,
because I've been on Twitter for so long, I have like tens of thousands of blocked accounts. But when I go onto TikTok, it's brand new, and now there's all these conservative bot trolls that are out there just saying crap that's irrelevant, right? And then some people actually glom onto that. So it's been really like, I wish activism, and there's room for everybody, but can we work with people and understand oppression dynamics? I've had a lot of ableism I've had to regularly unpack in order to
right.
do this work, trying to be more understanding of the issues and barriers that folks with disabilities are facing. And I try to, on my Instagram, put the alt text or whichever in order to try to make that a safer space for folks with disabilities. But, because it's not the standard, so many people don't, right?
Right.
So we all have work to do. That's not a question. But geez, I wish that
No,
at what point in time can I ever call somebody an ally? Because I'm just not seeing the work being
it's
done by non-Indigenous on this issue of reconciliation and treaty partnership.
it's more so like who they choose to spend their company with too.
Sure.
It's almost like, how can you champion an issue if you don't spend time with the people? Like,
Well, and here's the other thing, like I believe in that expression. If there's a table of 12 and a 13th person comes up who's a Nazi, you actually have 13 Nazis at the table. Like that's for real. And so if you're spending your time with Nazis in any capacity, I don't want you in my life. I don't want you in my circle. I don't want you in my community. You have nothing to contribute to my life. If you're going to be with folks like that, you are a Nazi. You're a Nazi sympathizer, right? So
exactly. I don't care how many like debate lives or anything in that regard that you want to do with me.
yeah,
That's totally all right with you, whatever. But my life is not up for a debate, so I
no,
have no idea why anybody was coming with heat to me and like being angry just because like I want to exist. If you're that angry that I'm not existing, something is really wrong with you. Unless if you're a diehard racist and you want to like tiki torch me and
yeah,
like burn me down,
yeah,
because that's exactly what I thought. I was like, oh my God, like
yeah, yeah.
15 white people and one black person, 15 white people and the other guy.
Sure, sure, sure. And that's just it. Like it's at a certain point, these are really yeah, I just block them so that we don't have any relationship whatsoever. And then they'll make, point two, point three, point four. And it's like, I don't want to have a relationship with you.
the
There's no nice,
the
I don't care
fake
how many
accounts
accounts you
too.
make. Yeah,
The
yeah,
fake accounts, like how many fake accounts are with them and how many fake accounts are mine?
yeah,
They just like totally disrespected me.
yeah,
And this is all because they don't want to hear me speak for some reason.
yeah,
And you got to ask yourself why.
yeah,
Like there's like eventually they have to ask themselves why. Like what is their um yeah, what is the reason why they want to like silence a gay black man,
yeah.
especially on an issue that they don't know about?
Right, right. So and that's really problematic. I just see it all the time now. The silencing of Indigenous voices, and we have like national folks who like write articles trying to silence Indigenous people. So it's just exhausting. I don't know. I'm really tired of it, but I know like I'm not going to stop because obviously my ancestors worked far too hard for me to stop
Mhm.
right now. But geez, Louise, I wish people would stop and listen, just
Part of
like I have to
activism,
with others.
part of activism and advocacy that I like though is this idea of being angry, acting up, showing the world that we matter,
Yep.
and not forming to their respectability politics, their language. Um, we can't be wrong all the time to the point where we don't exist. Because if that happens, there's somebody that is crossing the line.
100%. No, I get so tired of tone policing and respectability politics. Like it's killing us. We are dying. So many folks in the 2S LGBTQ2 plus community are being attacked. I can't like stress this enough. So this concept of respectability politics, like I'm in dark enough circles where some folks are sharing you know, oh, look at these three teenage girls who like literally killed Nazis during the Nazi time. And they would just be on their bike and shoot Nazis. I'm sorry, but like, we're getting attacked. At what point in time do we start fighting back? I don't know. But clearly people are not, they're so busy trying to tone police you, tone police me, that they're not willing to see that they are now becoming the Nazi sympathizer that is protecting the Nazis, rather than just listening to what we have to say and going, you're right. It's that
You,
simple.
you know what's interesting? They use the words like ableist language and this and that and the third, but they have no problems with a white nationalist to come to somebody's home
Yep.
and get them attacked.
I know.
Like, like how do you miss one and not the other?
I right. Right.
Like,
It's just wild to me. I hate being in the presence of police and these Nazis, but like, what else are we supposed to do? Just let them go into our children's school and shoot them up? Like, it's just so wild to me. I can't understand
like
this
we're
world that we live in, that the
and
Calgary police just let these guys come into our city and terrorize our children like this. And it's the protesters who tried to stop them that are getting charges over this.
they don't even think big picture. They
No.
don't think big picture of like what happens to other people. They don't think big pictures of what happens to minorities in general. Because they haven't experienced that. And here's the thing. I understand that the people on TikTok, getting a following is so exciting, right? I get it. I get that it's exciting to get a following. But like I got a following from sheer work. I was so like this weekend I decided that I was going to march with the Liberal Party.
Mm.
Um because mostly because the Liberal Party was very much so assisting me of getting whatever I wanted with Bill C4. And I wanted to show a thank you to the Liberal Party because they really took care of me.
Mhm.
So so I decided that I was going to go and march with them. But like what a lot of people don't get to invites during Pride to march with this party. You have to have like a special in usually to get an
Well,
invite.
maybe in Toronto where you guys have this scene, but in Calgary, I can promise you, anybody who's listening, please come join us. Just sign up at liberal.ca, come march with us. We'd be happy to have you.
There you go, nice
Yeah.
plug.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was pretty high tech. It was like one of the craziest moments that I've ever experienced in my life. But it was a stark difference between like some like going to be around people that hate you
Yeah.
and go and being around like what is considered quote unquote elite here in Canada, or Canada loose terms. Um it was the craziest experience of my life, and I don't think I'll ever get an experience like that ever again.
That's not true. You can come march with us every year.
Oh, that's true. I felt like I honestly felt like I was a celebrity. It was kind of cool.
But you kind of are actually, and I
Oh,
think that's the important part about you like marching, is that like this is where your community is, and you are one of the prominent leaders in the community, not just in Toronto but nationally. So it's important that people see you and see that you're still out there, and that you don't let, I don't know, some no-name TikToker try to like, it all cloud your glitter. Like, it's not okay.
you
It's
know
not
it's
okay. Yeah.
it's exactly, don't unravel our pride. That was the slogan. There was what's interesting? You can find out a lot about who people are just by Googling them. So
Sure.
when you Google somebody's first and last name, you can see who is legit and you can see who's not.
Yeah, and most
So
people on TikTok don't even use their names. That's actually some of the most frustrating parts about being on social media in general, is that like the same person will have a different persona in all their different media. So then like I can't put that together in my head.
Like
Somebody was,
we're
yeah,
out
yeah,
here. Me and you are out here. We're in our communities. We are in our respective communities.
yeah,
I don't know how anybody can talk tough on the internet by staying indoors.
yeah. Oh, I remember when I was like learning about activism and people are like, yeah, but what are you doing in your community? Are you taking that knowledge and helping your community? And that was when I really started to get more active in my local community. Unfortunately, my actual community that I live in, it was so awful. I had a community association president even threaten me for sharing events that were happening in the community. I'm like, why would you be mad that I'm sharing like this event that's happening? I don't know, Stampede breakfast, whatever it was. So I learned real quick to not be a part of my community association, and it was so unfriendly. But I created community in different ways with the book club or with the Reconciliation Action Group, or just trying, whenever I have elders tell me to jump, I just say how high, right? These are things I do. So that's just kind of what we can do. And as activists, but you have to do it locally. Like there are people that want to march when 215 graves are found, and these are things that we have to do as a community. And there are things that happen when they finally made an arrest to that serial killer. Like it shouldn't have been that long. It's insane to me that took that long. And as Indigenous people, we tell people they're serial killers by Edmonton killing our women. And everybody's like, dum, 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 it's okay because
Right.
it's just Native women and Two-Spirit. And it's like, no, it's a problem. But until we get Canadians on board, it's just going to continue.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
It really, yeah, yes. And it all it is like people taking just a tiny bit of initiative, just a tiny bit of initiative, and go to the respective communities that they desperately, they, I find that people waste their time on making posts about things or taking pictures by people
sure.
instead of doing the work.
Yeah.
If
I
you do
quit.
the work,
Yeah.
if you do the work, you can meet those people.
And that is exactly true. That is
It's really
exactly
sad.
true. Yep. Yep.
It's
So,
really sad. Like I didn't march with the Liberal Party because I just like them. I
yeah.
march with them because I know what they have done for me and my community.
Yeah. Yeah. Which is, and we have a great, well, he's a Liberal candidate that's in Lethbridge, and he was a part of Lethbridge Pride, and he was a part of the conversion therapy conversation as well. And I don't know if you know much about Lethbridge, really high Mormon influence, Christian influence. So, and even here in Calgary Forest Lawn, which is my riding, like we have a church that's still doing it, even though it's legal both through the city as well as
Mm.
federally. We all know it's still happening. So it's hard. This is a really hard thing to tackle. And now we have people that are fighting us and taking down our flags. And whenever we show any sort of municipalities, there's a municipality that said no more flag raising for anything. So no more Every Child Matters, no more Pride, no more nothing. And it's like, that's not how you build community, folks. And it is a protected right to be LGBTQ2 plus. So this concept that to not raise the pride flag and to, protest libraries, I just can't believe we're here, Matt. What a year, 2023, and people are protesting in front of libraries. It's incredible to me.
Like reading books, like it is the most basic. Like, are you gonna read to your child? Yes, no. Then have a drag queen read. Like it's really simple.
You
Like,
have to
what are you
sign
gonna
up to
read to your
go.
children?
Like, that's the whole thing. Like, it's queer families or queer friendly families that are like, yeah, I totally want my kid to have this drag king or drag queen, reading to my kid in a, appropriate outfit, just like you would see, I don't know, Mrs. Doubtfire or anything else. Like it's incredible how the conservatives, how the alt-right have just like perverted it in such an incredible way. And it makes you think, well, like, what is wrong with you that you would take something that really is so wholesome and just make it so ugly? And I think the
I
worst example I seen, I think it was out in Halifax. Somebody like literally took a picture of like a child's genitals. And I'm like,
oh
why
yeah,
is like, you have to report this to the police immediately. And it was one of these alt-right people that were trying to make some ridiculous point by taking pictures of children's privates and having them on a poster. And I was just like, you please tell me he's being arrested. And I have yet to see
right.
proof of that. This person is being arrested.
And 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 for the people that were attacking me to even like remotely tease or make fun of them, that's a child.
And that's what I
Like
mean. Like,
like
why are they putting any
conversation
effort?
over.
Yeah. Why are they putting any effort to talking to you or me when they have a pedophile that's in the alt-right, that they have proof of all of this? The cops are right. The cops should have swarmed that motherfucker and just immediately arrested him. Like, where are we as a society?
Yeah, I know. It's like, oh my God. It's like everybody is like wanting to have something to prove. Everybody wants to feel like there's somebody.
But Matt,
Everybody
for real,
wants to
if you were,
to
I would have been
maintain
there.
something.
Would you have like if there's a time you're willing to take an assault charge and punch a Nazi in the face, I think that might be the moment. Like,
Right.
how has no, but like, how did all of those people not go after this guy? Like, I can't understand that. You don't bring, like, holy cow. I can't even believe we have to explain this to anybody. Like, what is wrong with
It's
people that we
it's
have to talk about this, Matt?
it's upsetting because when you see the trajectories of what is happening, or what I saw this trajectory ever since November,
Sure.
and we know historically with religious right, alt-right, right in general, the abuses that the church has to younger queer children, for example. So we know all this happens, and then the anger starts, and this is all about accounts and whatever, but it's like, I don't understand how anybody can just continuously engage with individuals or befriend individuals that do that, period. Like,
Yeah.
in like engagement over, like that is like an absolute, like, I would not have anybody in my life that did that
No. No.
ever. Like,
No.
I wouldn't even joke about it. I don't even think it's funny.
Mm-mm.
It's disgusting.
Mm-hmm.
This happened to a child,
Yep.
and yet they call us what?
Right.
So
Yeah.
disappointing.
No, it's gross. But you did have a good time at Pride.
Pride was absolutely incredible. Like I said, I was marching with the Liberal Party. Um, it was fascinating. Everybody had an assigned RCMP officer.
Yeah. Okay, well,
Which,
let's unpack that a little. You know why we have to.
yeah, because it's really unsafe.
It's really unsafe that our own MPs have to be guarded while marching in Pride because of how unsafe this world is now. And why is it unsafe? Because allies are like, I so like to wave the rainbow flag, but right now, not. I'll just quietly be in the background while my company says we can't put rainbow on anything, or we take it out of Target. I'm like, what?
Right?
How can you think you're an ally? Like, how on earth do you think
Like,
you're an ally if you're not standing front and center protecting you and your community to just have a damn party one day?
or
And you're no
or
fucking
don't
ally.
or donate to queer momentum,
Oh,
like what you can afford,
yeah,
and like people that do grassroots on the ground work, which is so needed.
yeah.
But at the same time, it's like those people had a voice during the pandemic,
Hmm.
and they never had a voice before, and they're relying on that voice, even though that they know that that particular style is dying, because the real world is happening and people travel more and people go out more.
Or they go
And
back to work. Like, how interesting that people were like activists for the 2 minutes that the pandemic shut everybody in their house. Like, you're not an activist unless you're out there, unless you're doing that work. And I mean, don't get me wrong, being at home and doing letter writing and donating and doing that work behind the scene, that is doing the work too. But like, what are we seeing for the outcome?
like that's what I was doing during the pandemic. While everybody got started on TikTok,
Yeah.
I was indoors writing to politicians to try to get this legislation, the strongest legislation in the world.
Yeah. Which
And
is,
then
and then it
and then
happened.
here
Here we
and then
are.
here are people trying to make fun of my accomplishments, and I'm listed on TD Bank. LOL. How can you make fun of my accomplishments? Are
I
you
know.
listed on the bank? Has your accomplishments ever been listed on? Oh no.
Right
How's
on.
that for egotistical?
Well, but to be fair, like, what, you've almost died. Like, this is the thing that they don't get. You've had to live a world and you've survived it, right? And they haven't had that. They don't understand that oppression. They don't understand what it's like. And I was when I'm rejected by family, it's not because of my gender diversity status, although in Sexist Alberta it is, but it's different when you're a gay person, a trans person, a lesbian, a bisexual, just somebody trying to exist in this world, and your literal life is at stake. Maybe you get kicked out at 16 when you come out to your parents. You've lived a very different understanding of life, and rather than supporting what you've gone through, people are attacking you. Like, I will never understand why people punch down, and
But
especially when they
but I
haven't been
get
there.
it.
Yeah.
In a capitalist society, everybody wants to be at the top, but nobody's worked for it.
Mm.
And so that's why they punch down, because they haven't worked for it.
Yeah, I guess. Holy.
I mean, I mean, there is a difference. There's a huge difference between, because I've seen this from somebody that I used to call a friend. When you're when you're when you're taking photos of politicians, and when you're a part of a parade because of the work that you have done and invited by politicians, there's a difference.
Mm.
Huge difference.
Yep.
Like, you don't know who these people are. I know who these people are.
Yep. It's incredible. It's incredible, my friend. You
It's
know,
it's a learning curve that, if you're gonna be a social justice warrior, be sure that you build relationships with the right people, and if you fuck over the wrong people, it will follow you
yeah.
forever.
Well, my as a liberal, we had to start rebuilding after the Ignatieff loss, and Justin came to the party as a leadership candidate. So we've been literally door knocking and rebuilding the Liberal Party since 2011, and here it is, 2023, and it took a lot of work in order to have the structure in place, and have elected MPs in order to pass some substantial legislation like this, right? So I just, for folks who want to be somebody who does that really positive change, it could be as simple as donating to a party that actually stands for, abortion rights, healthcare, LGBTQ2 plus, whatever that looks like. But I, honestly, people are so disengaged with how politics actually work. I'm not a fan of colonial politics. Don't get me wrong. I've been trying really hard within the party to talk about UNDRIP and having equal representation as treaty partners. And those are very difficult conversations to have. And so much so, like, we weren't even having a conversation about, proportional representation because of it. And because at the end of the day, as treaty partners, we should be equal, and we're not. Like, the entire Senate should have Indigenous people, as far as I'm concerned, and we
I
can
agree.
be electing Indigenous people. But I mean, I've ran twice. I actually had an uncle tell me, because we just had the Alberta election here.
Mm.
He actually told my father, because he's not having a relationship with me, that he could never vote for the NDP because they're pro-Indigenous people. And I thought, so make that make sense to me, right? And as a gay man, what it's like to have people vote against, people who are pro LGBTQ2 plus rights. So,
Right.
like, we have that in common, where it's like, if you were literally voting against my existence, how on earth could I possibly have a relationship with you? So I
Right.
really feel like I'll probably never see that uncle again. I have no reason to, even a funeral, if I were to be invited, why would I go? Because, like, you don't even want me to
That's
exist.
exactly my dilemma
Yeah.
with my life is like, you know, people call me arrogant and egotistical, but it's like when I was growing up, I was like severely abused
Yeah.
by my father, just verbally, and called all these names. It's not a long time that I have a little bit of feeling good about myself, and somehow that threatens people. Somehow that's not allowed.
Yeah, you're healing. And I tell people this in my teachings. Like, I do a land acknowledgement teaching. It's really like an Indigenous 101, but I center QT BIPOC first, because those are the people who always feel uncomfortable in these conversations. And so I say, when you have those feelings, it's because you love yourself and your boundaries have been violated. And that because you've had to heal and unpack your boundaries for this long, right? So for folks who have never had to deal with this trauma, of course, they don't understand why you would actually stand up for yourself, because in their white savior mind, they need to save us.
It's just so wild.
Right?
You know, the thing that I learned about this entire situation is treat people kind.
Mm.
You know, you never know who you could be upsetting by the words, the actions that you're doing. Like, I'm having I had a conversation with a government official, and they were having a conversation with another government official, and we were all having this conversation. And the one thing that they said was, you did it, you did your activism respectfully, so everybody can so we can be held accountable for things, but you still got everything that you wanted, and we still like you after that. And you know what that told me? It told me that you can speak to people kind
Yeah.
and get whatever you want done.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's the reason why that they still have a relationship with me.
Yeah.
Running into Randy Boysenall, for example, which was funny. He's a really funny guy. Running into Randy
He's
Boysenall,
actually really sweet.
he is
And
actually really
yeah,
nice.
he's really sweet. And I've met his partner a few times now. Really
Mhm.
wonderful fellow as well. So, I just I really, when we first started in 2015, and he was our 2S LGBTQ2 plus representative, he
Secretary.
he was so perfect for it. Now he's our tourist ambassador. He talks a lot about tourism in Canada, so like he's obviously made for that too. But I had a little like with him with the way he talked to Jody Wilson Rainbow, but
Yeah,
I like it. I'm always unpacking that situation because it never feels good. It never feels easy. And, he showed a lot of loyalty to the party by trying to do that. And I still don't feel good about that, but I've
right.
seen Randy numerous times and I know his heart is in the right place for the bigger picture. But man, it sucks. It hurts knowing that she was our first justice minister and it just wasn't a safe enough space for her.
Yeah, safety is key.
Yeah, yeah, it bugs me. But I think that there's a real conversation about Indigenous inclusion that Canada hasn't had. Like we're still talking about racism, that you can't advocate for yourself. I can't advocate for me um, without there being so much fucking pushback. So of course, you can only observe situations like Jody and go from there.
We it's the people that are wanting to do the work too. And
Yes.
there's layers of decolonizing the mind. Then some
Yes.
people will get it eventually, and some people takes a little bit longer.
I've seen a big shift in you though since you started university and understanding indigenous issues and I love it. Don't get me wrong. I was hoping I could slowly bring you down into my world, but university is really helping and I'm really grateful that you've been taking university courses around indigenous issues and such because we do have so much parallels together.
Well, that's it's putting your money where your mouth is, right? I decided that I was going to spend the money to learn a little bit about a culture that everybody needs to know, and I also get a creditor for it too.
Of course, rightfully so, especially if you're doing this. Holy. Well, I'm really
Mhm.
glad you're going to school. Is there anything else you want to talk about today, Matt?
I just want for everybody in here to just treat people kind, treat people better, show up. If you are able to donate to a 2S LGBTIQ cause, queer.momentum. So it's www.queermomentum.net. I really love what the organization does. It's very refreshing to see that there is an initiative that is queer ran to make sure that Canada is a safer place for everybody
Mm,
and not just people that live in cities.
yeah. Yeah, because that's a real issue. We've been talking about safety for queers in Alberta and how unsafe it is. But, we've been trying to show solidarity. So we've had so many, pride flags or painted rainbows being vandalized recently. So we just repaint and we just repaint and we just repaint. And but every attack is a strong message, right? And which is ironic because we don't attack people for being straight. We don't protest them. Like it's just so insane to me. I'm straight, I'm cis, and the idea of somebody protesting me being straight and cis is still, it would be laughable because it's like this world is a patriarchy. It's
Yeah,
made for my husband. Thankfully he's my ally, but Jesus,
scary. It's a
it's
scary
really
reality.
scary, right? And so what's going to happen to my children who identify as queer, right? Like, and I will never understand this hate towards LGBTQ2 plus because it's not like it's taking rights away from anybody. It's just
Mhm.
allowing the existence of folks who might be on the verge of committing suicide, of unaliving themselves
You know,
because of this hate.
I'll state this. I'll say I think people hate 2S LGBTIQ because they are afraid that they might like it. Like, so I'll tell you a funny story, then I have to get going.
Sure.
So during Pride, during Pride, so PG-13 / rated R, next whatever. So once upon a time, there were some street preachers, and they were holding up signs like "God loves you," "Jesus loves you," whatever. So I saw it on Facebook, and I decided that I was going to change it into my shortest of shorts and walk down the street and like be by them and start touching myself and say, "Oh my God, I'm so."
When I think about you, I just want to. I'm just kidding.
Yes, yes.
But for real, like, why are you so threatened? What is like? I have had amazing people in my life who are bi, who are lesbian, and it's not gonna it doesn't threaten me. Like that's the irony. Like I will still look for a Jason Momoa in a moment. Like I don't like that I'm attracted to a Brad Pitt, especially after what he's done to Angelina Jolie. Like that's just me.
Yeah,
So like I don't understand that threat. I think
right.
I deal with a lot of Indigenous folks who will project lateral violence because I think inside they still have a lot of hurt and internalized racism, and myself included. Um, because I try to protect my kids and realizing I am siding with colonialism by trying to protect my kids. So, I think that there's a lot of folks who have that internalized homophobia, and that's why they project this persona. Like, is it this young man that came out from East to terrorize our children at the high school? Like, he was not giving me straight vibes at all, but he was really being coerced by the church. That was really clear. He was surrounded by church people, and they were giving out Bibles. That was what they were doing, if you can believe that. And it was like you do not have to go into a school during school times and hand out Bibles. Like that's disgusting.
Right.
And how the police were a-okay with that, because they weren't just doing that, they were saying, condemning the lifestyle, and this was on International Day to Stop Homophobia and Transphobia. Like that,
Yeah.
they did it on that day for a reason, right?
Wow.
Right. So it's deplorable. It's so
And
deplorable.
like those were like the exact same with the street preachers. Like you could find all of us getting angry and like just like having this aversion that like something is wrong with us, but like they're in our neighborhood.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
like they came to us, like we didn't go to them. We don't,
No.
and it's always them coming to us.
Always
So
pushing.
like,
And that's like,
why are
as
they so obsessed with us?
I know why. Out of all of the people, like if they looked at, my uncle always says, for one finger pointing out, there's three pointing back. So if every church person went after every pedophile and every sex abuser that's in their church, and they put that effort towards that, imagine how much safer this world could actually be. Imagine us not having a reason to hate the Catholic Church or the churches in general, because they actually took care of their own and didn't allow this abuse to continue. Instead, they give them promotions and they send them across to another school to abuse more kids. Like it's just wild to me how these folks think they have a leg to stand on when it comes to being judgmental about who is sinning about what, and then expecting a whole other community when their community is broken already.
Yeah,
So
100%.
yeah. All right, Matt. Thanks for coming on my show.
Thank you. Is it okay to leave?
Of course you can. Thank you for
Okay.
coming
All right.
on.
Thank you.
Don't be. Till next time. I'll see you
Mwah.
online.
Bye.
Bye. Folks, I hope you enjoyed listening as much as I loved having Matt on again, because I think because it's Pride Month and because I've been watching the hostilities directed at Matt. And I mean, here is one of our leaders and our so-called allies absolutely doing nothing, just like I'm seeing Adora and Taylor here in Calgary just being, butchered in the media and not seeing outrage. Like for folks who don't know, there was a ton of white people who were given paid positions on these anti-racism committees all across the country, but especially in Calgary. and not one of them have spoke up about how this situation is going down. It is disgusting, upsetting. There's no nice way to say it. So anyway, for folks who don't know, I run a book club. It is open to anybody who can get on Zoom. We did well, July is coming up and we're doing page 219 to 349 of volume 1B of the final report of missing and murdered Indigenous women, girls, and Two-Spirit. August, we're doing Our Voice of Fire by Brandy Morin. September, the 113 Pathways to Justice. In October, Cree lawyer Harold Johnson's book, Peace and Good Order, The Case for Indigenous Justice. November 13th, a report to guide the implementation of the National Plan on Violence Against Women and Gender-Based Violence. I don't know why we needed a separate report considering we have the national inquiry, but here we are. And then December, Making Space for Indigenous Feminism, edited by Joyce Green. I have talked about the Reconciliation Action Group here. I just highly recommend settlers who care about treaty partnership and doing the actual work of reconciliation, holding your politicians to account, join a committee, start learning. And if you guys prefer watching videos, watch videos, whatever it takes for folks to start doing the work. Don't think you're an ally by just wearing an orange shirt. You're just maybe being a little respectful as opposed to understanding what it's actually like to be Indigenous. I'm really proud that this podcast has given solutions and included cultural safety training or cultural first aid in all of them to create a safer space for Indigenous, people of color, those with disabilities, and 2S LGBTQ to speak. Thank you, authors Chelsea Ward, Alicia Branch, Cheryl Ward, Chelsea Branch, and Alicia Fritkin of heretohelp.bc.ca, because they wrote a great piece on what is Indigenous cultural safety and why I should care about it. Their work are cultural action tools. So please support work like that as part of your reconciliation and settler understanding. I'm just lucky enough to repeat and highlight it here. Internalized racism or lateral violence is another form of violence Indigenous and marginalized people face by the structure of racism imposed on these lands. Donna Bevins at racialequitytools.org has some wonderful resource files and a piece on what is internalized racism, and it's quite extensive. And so if you have some time or money to donate, give it to racialequitytools.org as well. Do's and don'ts for bystander intervention by American Friends Service Committee. So you're on the C train and you're getting ready for stampede and you see somebody mistreating Indigenous people. This is what you do. You see a Muslim being harassed. This is what you do. Do's and don'ts for bystander intervention. So you go to afsc.org and you will see a lot of information there. I wish anyone that follows me on social media would also watch the City of Calgary's anti-racism organization lead and his presentation on the journey of becoming an anti-racism leader. It's a great video to watch and, consider it be part of your cultural understandings. And he's Black, if that helps you, feel better about watching it. But at the end of the day, if you're not an anti-racism leader, you're a contributor to perpetuating racism on these lands. Adora and Taylor have gogetfunding.com bail fund legal support. I've also been sharing Adora's information regularly on social media. So please financially support them as they have to go through legal fees for what I think are awful charges and completely not true charges. It's really difficult for me to want to see any positive coming from all of this so-called anti-racism work we've been doing when the result is Black women, Black mothers protecting their children are the ones being targeted with charges and not the actual hate groups that are flying people in to create terrorism. I will never understand this moment. We are here in history. I hope and I'm not seeing Calgarians who claim to care about anti-racism measures speaking out. It's incredible to me. I don't. And here's the thing about that. by not speaking out, you're showing you're not an ally to me as well. You're showing me that. Now, I kind of already know that because obviously look at how like this shit show here in Calgary, but you have a chance to show some support, so you should be giving it. Anyway, Indigenous people have been talking about our issues, sharing our traumas and reports to commissions, public hearings, just so it can be regularly disregarded. No more. Honor our words, honor the treaties, listen to politicians and their policies and platforms. If they don't recognize the marginalized in their budget with Gender Equity Plus, if they are cutting violence prevention programs, Indigenous education, uterus health choices, gay straight alliances, lack of rights for immigrants, migrants, and those with disabilities, know that your vote to that party directly negatively impacts marginalized people. Demand that they implement the Truth and Reconciliation Commission calls to action, the recommendations of the Royal Commission on Aboriginal Peoples, the multiple reports about child welfare reform, the violence prevention, and now 231 calls to justice. Here in Alberta, Kenny created 113 pathways to justice, so all the blue voters should be holding your blue MLAs to account on it. You can also, the Premier claimed to have a council on missing and murdered Indigenous women. We have yet to see any positive momentum there. Municipally, we have the White Goose Flying Report. Denying these reports is a form of abuse called gaslighting. Our people are experiencing extreme racism in every aspect of society with multiple reports that say the same thing. Demand changes from your friends, your neighbors, your businesses. Like it's incredible to me that anybody who works for these organizations that are pulling pride products would be like, well, it's okay with me. I will not understand this. If they don't understand, if your politicians don't understand colonialism, racism, privilege, sexism, they have zero business running. This should be understood by all parties, local politicians, community organizations, and sports clubs. There's also, you can just Google how non-Indigenous Canadians can become allies, and you'll actually see multiple articles on that. Stephanie Harp and I did an emergency podcast to try to talk about some of these issues around Christmas time. Sign up for aboriginalalert.ca. You can also go to Missing Children's Society of Canada. They have an app you can download. There's a statement from the women's there's a statement from the women's homelessness.ca called the demand for urgent action to protect the lives of Indigenous women, girls, and Two-Spirit. Right? For folks to do this work. I can't believe we're having this conversation. We just released yesterday some new stats about the opioid crisis that's happening here. At the end of the day, there's so much stigma. I recently have an Indigenous sister I really respect almost recoil when I offered her Narcan because she said she didn't know much about it. And I was so disappointed because, here we're trying to fight addictions and trying to fight for our lives. And the new stats show we're dying everywhere. So if you think that this somehow doesn't affect you, you're wrong. And I highly recommend you start understanding what this drug crisis is about, because it's killing our elders, it's killing our children, and it's killing adults, it's killing everyone. So anyway, don't use alone. If you are using, you can create a plan with the National Overdose Supports or Response Service at 1-888-688-NORS. They also have Doors, a Brave, and a Lifeguard app you can also download to try to create a better safety plan. But ultimately, don't use alone. And whoever is with you, make sure they have Narcan or naloxone with them so that when you quit breathing, you have somebody to revive you. If you're experiencing emotional distress after anything I talked about today and need to talk, you can call the First Nation and Inuit Hope Wellness Helpline at 855-242-3310. You can go to hopeforwellness.ca's website, and they have a text box. And if more related to missing and murdered Indigenous women, girls, and Two-Spirit, you can go to 844-413-6649. And if you're non-Indigenous, you can also call the distress centers in your line or in your area. Usually there's a functioning line. You can also call 211 in a lot of cases, or 833 456-4566. And you can also text at 45666. Excuse me. You can also text at 45645. And they also have a website, crisisservicescanada.ca. 60 Scoop Society, Indigenous Society of Alberta is ssisa.ca. The Indian Residential School Survivors and Family Hotline is 866-925-4419. Kids Help Phone 1-800-668-6868. And the Native Youth Crisis Hotline is 877-209-1266. Trevor Project has tons of resources for 2S LGBTQ in crisis. You can go to lifevoice.ca, or you can call the Trans Lifeline at 877-330-6366, or the Youth Trevor Project line is 866-844-7386. Violence is my everyday reality. Every Indigenous has faced it. Every Indigenous generation and person has faced it. This is self-care, how I take my power back. It's why I started the podcast, to speak freely without interruption, tone police, leadership shaming, gaslighting questions, as many people don't want to hear Indigenous opinion, but sure want to tell us theirs, even if they know nothing about us, colonialism, the constant surveillance of our people and our rights and our protests. I and many other people share microaggressions daily, so it's just unacceptable. Like, the information is out there. Learn about being trauma informed. Folks like me are dealing with internalized racism, gatekeeping, folks who live off the status quo, and internal and external racism has become an everyday reality for me and folks who are considered equity seeking. I do want to say masicho to my ancestors, to my granny, to my mom, of what strength looks like through your example. I want to thank my dad for teaching me to be strong and blunt. My stepmom for showing me what a proud culture is through her Austrian family. It's through her, I'm a second generation Calgarian. Anyway, thank you to my husband, Darcy. On top of being my husband, childhood friend, father of our child, and support down my journey of the Red Road, he has witnessed decades of sexism and racism. And to our child, Thunderpipe Necklace Woman, we are honored you chose us. You give me daily accountability to be a better and stronger person. I just hope one day that my family will be proud of us trying to talk about these present day issues in a way that they can understand down the road. My Patreon account is Native Calgarian, where you can pledge and support. Thank you, previous donors, for showing your support. If you value listening or watching and can afford to give, thank you. To those who cannot afford to give, I'd love to hear from you at nativeyyc@gmail.com, where you can send in your comments or your questions. I also have a YouTube channel. You can go and subscribe. You can go to nativecalgarian.com for the latest podcasts. And if you want me to come speak, you can also go there. I also want to say thank you to all of the folks who have given me, whether it's $1 or more, over the course of the years that we've had this podcast. I never know how much longer it's going to go. We have an anniversary coming up, and the lack of funding and the hate and the targeted hate against activists is really starting to affect my soul. So I just want to say thank you for folks who have tried to intervene in a positive, constructive way. And I hope that maybe after listening to Matt and I a little bit, you understand that sometimes you're problematic and that maybe you have more work to do for anti-racism and Indigenous education and being more to us LGBTQ2 plus friendly and understanding the incredible amount of abuse that Matt and I have had to put up with in order to be here today, to be having a podcast. Anyway, I do want to end with side-eye to those Calgary rabbits. You're lucky I'm not Tradish. And my beautiful cousin would respond, or you'd be in my dish. And let me tell you, my new dog, Hugo, sure wants to get you. So thanks, folks, for listening. Always appreciated.